Ciaroni, Midland University was considering Leigh Hamilton for employment. Isn't that correct? As to the reasons why you were called?
No.
He was not being considered for tenureship at Midland University?
He was already employed by Midland University as an untenured professor. He wasn't seeking employment, he was seeking tenureship.
He was seeking a different route in his employment, correct?
A progressive route, yes, that would be tenureship.
And his tenureship would have been contingent based on your approval, is that correct?
Well, as well as his job performance, of course, but yes.
But he agreed to demonstrate his mental fitness by getting your approval, correct?
Certainly.
So you met with him back in October 2003, you stated?
Initially, yes.
And it was then that you diagnosed him with clinical depression?
A mild case, yes.
But you didn't perform any chemical tests to prove that, correct?
As no test chemically exists for depression, no, I didn't.
Well, did you ever test his serotonin level?
No.
Okay. And it was then that he would have to go on a 2-year probationary period with Midlands University, correct?
Yes.
And after that 2 years, he would be reconsidered for the tenureship, true?
Yes.
And he was aware that your approval was contingent on this basis, correct?
Yes, one of the contingencies was my approval.
And you didn't meet or see with him at all during that 2-year probationary period, did you?
I received updates from his therapist, Dr. Rubenstein. However, I didn't treat him, no.
And the second assessment that you saw him with 2 years later, you found that he was no longer depressed.
I saw him 3 years later, counseling.
3 years later? Sorry.
Could you repeat your question?
So 3 years later when you met with him, you found that he was no longer clinically depressed, correct?
Yes, his symptoms have entirely subsided.
And you decided to take him off the medication?
I did.
But shortly after, when he was found to have committed suicide, you became concerned, didn't you?
Of course, he's my patient.
In fact, you worried about civil liability from his family?
Well, in medical school, we're taught to fear the L word, or litigation, so instantly I did. However, upon 5 minutes review of who Hamilton was, and the fact that it was very unlikely that he would commit suicide, I was no longer concerned.
You were no longer concerned after only 5 minutes of thinking about who he was?
Yes, in review of his symptoms, he had mild depression, so it was highly unlikely that he would commit suicide.
In fact, you even worried about losing your reputation. Isn't that also true?
As I said, for about the first 5 minutes until I again assessed who he was and deemed that it was an impossibility.
I'd like to just talk about a few of the statistics that you brought up previously.
I didn't bring up any statistics.
Brought up previously in your affidavit?
Mentioned in my affidavit?
Yes.
They're not my clinical statistics, they're other scientists.
Right, just the statistics that you've previously stated before. They're not your statistics, but isn't it true that some statistics...
Basis for your objection?
As the witness just testified, they are not her personal statistics, and therefore she cannot be testifying about them in court today.
Your response?
I'm just asking her to merely agree with me on the basis of some statistics.
If she knows the
She's-
statistics, she can testify.
Yes, Your Honor.
She's an expert.
Are you aware that some statistics show that family life can play a big part in suicidal tendencies?
Yes, I knew something.
And isn't it also true that Leigh Hamilton's grandfather attempted suicide?
That is true.
And that his father also committed suicide?
That is also true.
But he didn't tell you that, did he, in his first initial assessment, did he?
No, Hamilton lied to me once, and I could tell he was lying because he became taciturn and looked down and away. He was one of those stereotypically stoic males who was embarrassed about the subject of suicide.
And isn't it also true that statistics show that unmarried people or widows are more likely to commit suicide?
Yes, one study says that.
And isn't Leigh Hamilton also divorced?
Yes, he was not married at the time.
No further questions.
Very brief, Your Honor.